Hello and welcome to the Eye on the U podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Hurricanes podcast. I'm David Wilson and I am joined first on this week's episode. It's going to be a little bit of a two-parter, but first up we got Michelle Kaufman, our Miami basketball beat writer at the Herald. We're going to do some football in the second half of the episode with Susan Miller-Degnan. We just finished up at practice. Each were driving home separately while the basketball team was playing. A big basketball game. Miami hangs on for a 2-point win against Wake, getting to the ACC tournament semifinals for the second straight year. Looks like they'll play Duke, I think, unless
It's
big
looking,
meltdown
yeah,
happens.
Duke. It would have to be an FSU level collapse,
Yeah.
a UM level collapse in the
Yeah,
FSU.
well, I guess we can get to
Yeah.
that. But anyway, Michelle, thanks for joining us. We're not going to go too specific because by the time a lot of people listen to this, they'll probably play that second round or semifinal game. But busy time of the year for basketball. Let's start real quick with the Wake game, and then I want to talk about the win Saturday to win the ACC against Pittsburgh, one of the bigger win moments in the program's history. But today, Miami up, I think 17 it was in the second half. Like always, they find a way to make it close in the end.
Find a way to.
For the
They
most
just
part,
want to
they
keep.
pulled them out. Yeah. So what's
They're
up
trying
with that?
to. They're trying to increase the ratings. They want to make sure that you don't turn off the TV. Don't take anything for granted. They have to, squander leads and then win. But yeah, I mean, it's happened a little. I think I'd be a little nervous if I were them.
Yeah, that was where I wanted to go first. I don't want to be too down after a win that sends them to the ACC semifinals and keeps them in play for a top 4 seed. But how much of a concern to you? Because it has been obviously the Florida State game. I think was like I think guys came out of that and were like, we hope this is a wake up call, basically. But it kind of has been a trend all year long. Their inability to put away pretty much anyone. How much of a concern is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Coach L is going to stay positive, and the players, they say, a win's a win, survive in advance. As long as they win, it doesn't matter if it's ugly. But I think you are pushing your luck a little bit if you think that every time you're going to be able to just pull out the shot that you need at the moment you need. And the FSU game obviously was a complete debacle and collapse. And then, the Pitt game, I mean, that was amazing, monumental win, which we'll discuss. It was a great moment in just everything, the atmosphere, the cutting down the nets, the fans, all that, the students. But if that one shot went in, the UM would have lost that game.
Yeah, you could say that about a whole bunch of games. I mean, obviously the Florida State game is the one where it bit them, where the desperation shot does go in. But even today, Wake had a shot at half court with a chance to win. Yeah, like you said, Pitt, obviously. So, that's the flaw with this team, right? They've got an elite offense, one of the best offenses in the country. But the defense is pretty bad. And you see, like in college basketball, the best teams are the teams that can force the other team to go into those like 4-minute droughts, because that's kind of what people say college basketball is a game of runs, but really it's a game of like, are you going to be the team that has the terrible scoring drought? Because the offense is pretty bad all around in college basketball, and Miami does not do that in the way that good teams do. Like they get a little, I don't know if lazy is the right word on defense, because I'm sure they're trying hard, but it looks lazy sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think sometimes I think it's that they're moving so fast that they're a little careless. You know what I mean?
Careless is probably the better word than lazy.
Yeah, I think that they're kind of traveling at 100 miles a minute, and when they're trying to defend, or sometimes they just cough the ball up, or they just like make some pass that's just so fast and they're not thinking, and it ends up being a turnover. And my husband and I were talking about the press. They're not very good, against the press. Sometimes when they're pressed, they're not as good as obviously when they're free flowing. They're an amazing free flowing team in the open court. But when someone starts to press them and defend hard, they do cough up the ball sometimes, and that's where they miss, Charlie Moore. I mean, look, Isaiah Wong is ACC Player of the Year. Jordan Miller's a great player. Norchad Omier, all these guys. It's an incredible season. There's no way you can't say it. This team could end up being better than the other team. But as far as having like a really true point guard who handles the ball well and carefully, you know, that's not really the kind of point guard that they have. They have great athletes and shooters, but they sometimes are a little bit careless with the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the one, and it's a glaring flaw, we should say, with this team is, I don't know if this rule has held true in the last couple of years. I'm sure it has. There was Mark Titus, who Club Trillion fame, once did there's the rule where it's if you have one NBA guard and I think a top 25 defense like that, those are the two ingredients you need to win a championship. Miami certainly has the NBA guard. The defense, though, and KenPom, I think, is outside the top 100. So it's like that's a pretty big flaw for this team, that for them to win a championship would be sort of unprecedented. But I mean, their offense is pretty spectacular with those couple of guys. The fact that, like,
I mean, they're
they
the
can,
top offense, you know, they're the top
Yeah.
offense in the league, and you know, they can
and one of the
easily
top in the
score
country. I
80.
don't know where they rank in
Yeah.
KenPom, but they're pretty high up there. And you even today, when we're talking about we went straight to the negatives from this game. The positives were that game was close at halftime, and then, like, in a flash, it was not, because they go on like a 19-4 run, I think it was, and
yeah, and they were shooting, I think, 11 of 13.
they've got
they
that
opened the second half
explosive
with 11 of
ability that
13.
very
Yeah.
few college teams do.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're, you know, they play so well together. They, you know, they do. And Norchad Omir he's really good. I
Mhm.
mean, for a guy, he's not tall, but he's so strong, and he's really just such a unique, dynamic player. And Jordan Miller is so versatile, and Nigel Pack, you know, when he shoots, and, you know, when he's doing well, he plays well. And then Isaiah's really solid. I mean, he's the team leader, he's the quiet leader, and
He's the ACC. When you can say that about the ACC player, that you can be like, he's solid. Like, he's like the third guy you talk about. That's pretty
solid.
good. Pretty good. You're in pretty good shape in terms of your roster, at least.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a good roster. I mean, that's the thing. You know, when you think about all those guys that made all ACC, you know, second team, third team, whatever, they really, you know, sometimes Isaiah isn't even their best player.
Right.
And he was
Yeah, I mean, they had
player of the
stretches this year where it was like, what's wrong with Isaiah Wong? And it doesn't matter, because they at least have so many scoring options.
Yeah, and Wooga has stepped it up.
Yep.
You know, Wooga has really stepped it up. I mean, Bensley Joseph has been good on defense, but Wooga has really stepped up the offense. And that pick game, again, they wouldn't have won that pick game if he hadn't hit 6 threes.
Yeah.
You know, 6 out of 8 threes. So, you know, they do have a lot of weapons, and they're kind of on a mission. The team has great chemistry, which is very similar to the other teams that made deep runs. Miami teams, they were older, several transfers, great team chemistry.
Yeah.
All of those things still ring true with this team.
Speaking of that pick game, that's where I want to go next, because that was I didn't get to see. I mean, I was like kind of monitoring. I was covering the Panthers that night, so I wasn't like watching on TV with the volume on. But it seemed like about as electric. I mean, you've covered the team for a long time now. It seemed like about as electric an atmosphere as there has ever been in that building.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's students. I mean, even though they had sellouts in previous seasons, but it was older people. It was people my age. It was people my husband's, you know, it was a lot of old alums who are very dedicated and loyal, but, you know, they just clap politely. They're not going to be like, you know, dressed crazy and waving bad heads and screaming and dancing and all that stuff. And the students have finally figured out, I think, that category 5 group, plus building on the Elite 8 last year, that category 5 group, the leaders of that group have done a phenomenal job. And they've turned Miami students into true ACC basketball fans, where it's like the thing to do now is for those kids to go to the Watt. They even call it the Watt. Like, it was never called the Watt. It was the Watsco Center, you know. Now all of a sudden it's like, we're going to the Watt, we're going to the Watt. So, you know, it has a little name. They had the black out, the orange out, the white out, whatever, you know, they're doing you know, they're kind of orchestrating things and having fun and being loud. And yeah, that atmosphere was as good as an atmosphere as I've ever seen at the University of Miami basketball. And I've been covering it since 1996. And when they stormed I mean, I wasn't surprised when the announcer said, everybody stay in their seats. And I was like, that's not going to happen. So those
it's
kind
like
of
the vote of
moments,
confidence. It means that no, it's not what's gonna happen. If you
it's
got to
definitely
warn
not
about
gonna
that, it
happen.
means it's not happening.
Yeah, and they all stormed, and then they all sang "We Are the Champions," and the cutting the nets and all that. I mean, it was really a great moment. And I think, to be honest, this game today that they played against Wake, I think they were so jacked up about winning the
Mhm.
ACC regular season title and all of the emotion and wearing the little nets on their hats and all that. I think they had to kind of get some energy again, recharge the battery for this game against Wake. I think they were a little slow starting today, and I think they just
Yes.
didn't have the emotional excitement that they had for that big game.
Yeah. You wrote a column the other day about Miami being a basketball school or not a football school, being a little bit of both. And yeah, I still a football school in my opinion, but this was like you obviously people clown on the Miami students for like not going to football games, but there's like I kind of get it, right? Who wants to hop on that bus, right? I like they're built-in excuses. The fact that the basketball team has been in such a good position. Obviously, they had 3 down years in a row and COVID, and that made it tough. But that arena is on campus. That team is really good. Jim Larinaga, like, just is probably the best coach Miami has ever had in any sport, period. Like, that guy's a Hall
Yeah,
of Famer. They're good pretty much every year, even if they're other than, like I said, those couple of years they were really hampered by the FBI investigation.
right. Yeah, they've
And
won
some
of the
really bad
12
injury
years.
luck. Yeah.
Yeah, I pointed out that of the 12 years, I mean, of the 12 years, they've had 20-win seasons, 8 of the 12
Yeah, like
years.
that, and that's unprecedented at Miami, right? Jim
Right.
Larinaga, like you can look, the pre-Larinaga, post-Larinaga splits are insane. And it's cool to see that because they're like, I mean, we've talked about it on this show before, just like kind of frustrating how the student body, and people will say it's a private school, it's a small school, but Watsco Center is a small building, right on campus. Like, it should have been a good home atmosphere. Like, those small buildings, I don't want to compare it to Cameron Indoor Stadium. Both of us have been in there. Like, Watsco in some ways feels similar. Cameron's older, more historical.
Right.
Obviously that program is better, but like, it's a good home. Like, those small gyms can be really good home court atmospheres. And it was
It can be a
really
great
cool to see it turn
atmosphere.
into one this year.
Yeah, and it did. It did. This is as good this year overall. The student attendance and the noise, the decibel level is completely different from what it was. Like I said, even if there were games like FSU and Duke, there were certain games that always sold out, but it wasn't that loud. It wasn't like it
Yeah.
is now. I mean, it is loud, and the students are really into it. I mean, if there's a call they don't like, they're screaming and whatever and complaining, and it's like a real bona fide ACC venue now, which
Yeah.
it was not before. It
And
was one of the worst. It just had no,
yeah.
it was just flat, it had no atmosphere, and it really does now. It does.
Yeah.
Even the pep band is twice the size that it was. It used to be like 12 of them, and now it's like 30 of them or something. So it's really been fun this year. It's been a
Yeah. And
really fun to cover.
it gets loud in there. And this is the kind of season that creates fans, right? It's like there's been a lot of talk about like how Gen Z and the younger generations aren't as big of sports fans as people from my generation and your generation. And obviously there's been like a decade-long story now about declining attendance at college football games and all that kind of stuff. But like, there's nothing. I mean, I'm biased. I grew up going to Maryland games my entire childhood when they were a ACC powerhouse. And there's nothing like great college basketball atmosphere. And that's a season like this is one that creates, they're going to, even if the team falls off a little bit next year, you would think like those students who are going to games this year, they're going to want to go to games next year. And then if they stay in, like, it creates lifelong fans. And it's a program that over the last kind of decade has obviously become something unlike they've ever been, and kind of deserve it. And then obviously just that win on Saturday, they've won the ACC before, so it wasn't unprecedented, but as you said, like, be able to do it at home,
It was
after,
only the second time. I mean, it took
only the
10 years
second
to do it
time.
again.
And you think
Yeah.
about where this program was 18 months ago, where
Yeah.
there was a lot of, I don't think Miami ever got close to thinking about firing Jim Larinaga, but there were definitely
Well,
some frustration among the fan
who
base.
posted,
Yeah.
there were
There was,
fans who posted those things on Twitter, but
in the last 18 months, it totally has flipped back to now Miami basketball is kind of in a better spot than it's ever been. And that was not, obviously they want to go on a run again in the tournament here, but even more than the Elite Eight run, which was the first time ever, like running through the ACC like they did this year is kind of like the crowning achievement of this two-year run so far, I think.
and to be whatever 15-1 or whatever,
Yeah.
at home. And I mean, they broke so many records this year. They did so many things that they hadn't done. And all credit to Coach Larinaga and, Isaiah Wong for
Yeah, I
coming
was gonna say like Isaiah Wong. I mean, Jordan
when he
Miller only
came
here for
back.
2
That was a
years.
big
Yeah.
lift. When they lost all the guys from the Elite Eight team, I really was wondering, like, well, like who's coming back? Just
Yeah.
Bensley Joseph and Anthony Walker. I mean, I didn't know how this team was going to be. And when Isaiah came back, that was a huge lift. Jordan Miller had played really well last year too, so he just elevated his game
Yeah.
and his profile. But it was a big deal when Isaiah came back, and then to get those two transfers and they just picked up right where they left off, which is not what I expected. And it was surprising to me. They've been
Yeah.
surprising that they're better than I thought they were going to be this year for sure.
Yeah. I don't want to talk too much tournament preview because a lot will change between now and Selection Sunday, but what I think the latest bracketology I saw Miami at 5, it feels to me like if they go on a run here through the rest of the weekend, they could jump into that top 4. I don't know. I would think if you win the ACC tournament and the regular season, you got
I would think
a shot at a 3 seed, maybe even.
Yeah.
Like we'll see. But good.
Yeah, 3 or 4, and it could be Orlando.
Yeah, which would
if
be
they end up in Orlando, that would be, they a lot of the fans would be able to go. And I was already hearing some students say, that if they end up in Orlando, they were going to drive and caravan and whatever. So that would even elevate things again for the fan base, for these local students who were not fans and all of a sudden are fans. If they could jump on and actually experience an NCAA tournament, which is something most of them never have, that would also, definitely give them a taste of what college basketball, NCAA tournament, March Madness, all that stuff. I think that would even raise things to a higher level.
Yeah, it'll be spring break, so good excuse to get a trip to Orlando, maybe.
Yes.
All right, Michelle, thanks for coming on. We'll hopefully get you back on next. We'll see when how Miami's schedule shakes out in the first round next week. But hopefully we'll get you back on, and if not, certainly at some point in the next couple of weeks here to talk some more basketball, because it's the most wonderful time of the year.
It is. I agree. To me, it's the best American sporting event. Is the NCAA tournament. I love one and done. I know it's cruel. I know great teams can lose to little teams, but that's what makes it so, the best of 7, best of 5 series, whatever. I love the one and done. You root for, you learn these little teams you've never heard of before. And sometimes they pull these upsets, and it's just, you just never know. So
yeah, Miami's been on both ends of it, right? Losing to Loyola as a top 6 seed, I think they were. And then obviously last year they were the little underdog and went all the way to the Elite Eight. So
so it'll be fun. All right. Well, we'll talk again.
Yeah. You can follow Michelle on Twitter at Kauf Sports. Obviously she's got lots of basketball coverage here over the next couple of weeks. So check her out and check out MiamiHerald.com for all of our Miami coverage. I'm going to take a quick break now, though, and we'll be back with Susan Miller-Degnan to talk about the first week of spring practice in Miami. Okay, we're back now, joined by Susan Miller-Degnan talking football. We finished up a couple hours ago down on Greentree. The 3rd day of Miami spring practice in the books. They'll now have a little more than a week off for spring break before they get back out there again in a couple of weeks. So 3 practices in the books. We wanted to give our three biggest takeaways from 3 days of spring practice. And Susan, we're going to start with number 1, which is, it kind of feels like the first day of the Mario Cristobal era all over again, with all these coaching changes. I think the biggest takeaway from these coaching changes, which I guess we can run through really quickly, obviously, we've got Shannon Dawson as the new offensive coordinator. We've got Lance Guidry as the new defensive coordinator. We've got Tim Harris Jr. as the new running backs coach. We have Kevin Beard as the new wide receivers coach, and we have Jason Taylor as the new defensive line coach. Am I missing anyone?
Derek Nicholson.
Oh, right. And yeah, we have Derek Nicholson as the new linebackers coach.
Outside linebackers.
Outside linebackers coach.
Yeah.
So new coaches all across the board. We can touch a little bit on what we've seen from all of them, but the place I wanted to start where there's really a big takeaway is it does sound like this offense is going to be different just based off conversations with Mario Cristobal on Saturday, Tyler Van Dyke on Saturday. And then I wasn't there Tuesday, but you guys got to talk to both Shannon Dawson and Lance Guidry. They kind of acknowledge like at least the passing game is going to look pretty different, I think, than it did last year.
I think so. I'm not sure.
Which isn't surprising, but in some ways it is because Mario can kind of be stubborn and stuck in his ways. But given what Shannon Dawson brings, it makes sense that it's going to be different.
Hold on. I need a little sound effects. It's my podcast beer.
I don't think we could hear it.
Oh, you can't hear it?
No, it was a little quiet.
7-Up zero sugar. Yeah, and the thing is, yeah, I mean, Mario, I think, is in on the passing stuff, but we did, out of all those coaches, we didn't talk to all of them.
Right.
We did get to interview defensive coordinator Lance Guidry, offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson. That was it as far as interviewing the new coaches. But those, were the ones we really wanted to talk to.
Yeah.
As far as the offensive coordinator, they were very different. The two guys, the personalities. So they're both, by the way, Cajuns. As Lance Guidry is very happy, they're both from Southern Louisiana and have that Cajun drawl, and but the different. Dawson, he had a sinus infection, which didn't help. Okay, he was super hoarse. His voice, he could hardly talk. Was friendly, but he didn't say really anything. Okay, he was very general. Said that he's going to pass, but and he wants to pass for more yards than they did last year. He said, but he's also going to run. He just sounded like every other offensive coordinator I've ever heard. And he didn't give any specifics about players other than saying that he was high on Tyler.
Yeah,
calling Tyler Van Dyke, starting quarterback, elite. And said that UM was probably a little farther along than he had expected with picking up his offense, and he credited Tyler for that. He said he was impressed with Jakari Brown, and that Emory Williams, the incoming freshman quarterback, he's a freshman and he should be in high school. That was pretty much the gist of that. Although I'm impressed with Emory Williams. He looks like a strong kid and stuff. And I don't know. I'm really interested in seeing how he does. But anyway, Shannon Dawson didn't say anything really. He didn't say much. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But the players all seem to like him a lot. And today, for example, I know we're going to talk about the O-line, okay? But today, Inez Cooper, sophomore right guard, was saying that he liked him because, I don't know, it seemed like they were picking up the offense more or something, or he didn't have to look to the sideline as much for signals. That might just because he's a year older. As far as Guidry goes, really liked him a lot. As far as personality, everybody did. We've had two good defensive coordinators in a row as far as dealing with the media. He seemed really, really good. He's not worried about telling people whatever. He said, he was saying that everybody thinks they run a hybrid 2-4-5, and it's not true. He said it's two defensive ends that are standing up, which I think everybody's kind of that, right?
Yep.
he said they kind of look like outside linebackers. But he said it's 4 down linemen, 2 backs, and 5 DBs. He said sometimes he'll go again, which we wrote 4-3 with 3 linebackers when the offenses go heavy personnel. Anyway, he seemed, I liked him because he's kind of he does a lot of different things, I think. He's probably pretty intuitive and a little bit unorthodox. He said he likes to learn a little bit from everybody. And the defensive linemen are, a lot of them are out now.
Yeah.
He said probably 4 of the starters on paper, he said, are out. So
I didn't realize he said that. I wrote that today because we're not going to talk. We should say we're not going to probably talk a whole lot about the defense because they have a lot of injuries. Akeem Mesidor, Jafari Harvey, Leonard Taylor, Jared Harrison Hunt. That might be their starting defensive line. All those guys are out. Jacob Lichtenstein has been in that red jersey. James Williams is out. That's obviously going to be one of the starting safeties. Cornerbacks, they're replacing 2 starters. We really have no feel yet who those guys are going to be. Corey Flagg, there's been reports, will be limited in spring, although we've seen him out there.
We did say, although not to mention that for all the people listening to this podcast or watching or whatever you do, it's the defense is kind of on the,
especially the defensive line. We get a pretty good look at the DBs, but
we do. We get a good look at DBs. They're on the other side of the field, kind of from the offense where everybody tends to gather, but they're very far away, the D linemen, as are the O linemen, but we get to see some of that in the
we see like some 7-on-7 and like 11-on-0 type stuff.
Exactly.
Anything else stand out to you from the other coaches other than the coordinators? To me, it's like it's kind of crazy watching Jason Taylor like be a college football coach out there. Again, D-line's far away, but I was watching them a little bit. Just I don't know if Jason
what
Taylor,
did you notice?
I just think if Jason Taylor, a Hall of Famer, is out there like demonstrating how to go through a drill and like running through some like pads and stuff, like I don't know, that can't get you like fired up. I don't know what will.
I could come to you. If I were a football player, if I were a defensive lineman, I'd come to UM just to learn from him.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, come on,
like obviously it's one thing to hear it, but then when you like actually see it and like they're like, oh right, that's Jason Taylor. Like that guy's one of the best defensive linemen of all time, and he's just casually being the defensive line coach for Miami, which went 5-7 last year.
Exactly. And by the way, Guidry said that that he imagines he'll be a defensive coordinator.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, I think I've said it on the show before. He at St. Thomas Aquinas, obviously St. Thomas Aquinas has a ton of talent, but like he was like really, really highly thought of there. Like he was their defensive coordinator there, but like everyone knew when he was there that his future was NFL or college football.
Definitely.
It was just a matter of time.
He'll definitely end up that. And so that's kind of cool. And I noticed Kevin Beard.
Yeah.
Because I know him, even though I haven't even been able to catch his eye to say hello, but he's but I covered him when he played, and I know him, same personality, very friendly, but he was intense, but not in a he's a very nice guy, so not like in a mean intensity. Intense, okay, if that makes sense, kind of an upbeat intensity, but not. I noticed him today. He was instructing a lot, very hands-on. I know last year when Gaddis came, we said the same thing. It was true. We were watching him with the receivers and stuff, but they like Kevin Beard. I mean, we talked to Colby Young today, and I know you're doing a story on him, and he seemed to really like Kevin Beard and stuff, but I liked watching him a lot. And also Tim Harris Jr. Yeah. Whose dad Ice was there today.
Yeah, Ice was there walking around with Ed Ogeron, who I'm sure is loving this Cajun flavor on the coaching staff.
Yeah.
He's been at practice. I think he was definitely there Saturday and Thursday. I don't know if he was out there Tuesday, but yeah.
Got a good tan going.
I think he's
Yeah.
enjoying retirement or whatever he's in technically right now.
I think he is.
Number two
so
take.
that's anyway. Tim Harris,
Yeah.
was working hard with. I like those assistants.
Yeah.
I don't know Derek Nick. I just don't know. I know Tim, of course, and
Right.
I know. So I don't know the other guys really well.
Number two takeaway to me is this is still Tyler Van Dyke's team. Not that there should have been a lot of doubt, but again, this guy only played. He actually technically played a lot of games, but got knocked out of 3 of them. So, I think there were. I don't want to say there were questions about Tyler, but it's been a long time since we got to really like see Tyler Van Dyke be the centerpiece of everything Miami is doing, and the coaches are all raving about him. We talked to Matt Lee today, and he talked about how when he came on his official visit in, I guess it would have been January, when he was deciding where he wanted to transfer, Tyler, obviously they were on winter break, but Tyler flew home from Connecticut for the visit. So he could be there to like kind of host Matt Lee.
Right.
Obviously we're seeing him practice, which we had talked about that before camp. Like, was he going to be out there in full, coming off an injury? What was he going to be able to do? Seems like he's a full participant out there. It was just, these couple of days have been a reminder that everything, not in a bad way, not in like he's a diva way, but like everything revolves around Tyler Van Dyke. They know their success is tied up in 1, keeping him healthy, and 2, playing well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, and I'm still nervous until he gets hit a few times, or however many times. I still worry about that shoulder, but it's just so different when you're not when you have no contact, and he's not gonna get touched, like we've said. So, but yes, the team definitely revolves around him, and it should. He's great. He's like a pro.
Yeah.
There's nothing bad that can be said about him, and I sure hope this offense takes,
accentuates his abilities. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. Accentuates, plays up to his strengths.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not a whole lot to say about Tyler. I'm looking forward to, we'll see. Hopefully we'll see him a little bit in the spring game. And if not, I'm looking forward to seeing what he'll look like this season, because it was not that long ago. Even at points last year, we were like, all right, this guy's still great. But it's been a long time since we saw him put together a stretch of really good play. And obviously he's an upperclassman now. So, this is going to be, if this team is going to get back to a bowl, but compete in the ACC, it all goes through him. And I mean, you really get, they've got some other, actually, it's a good moment, I think, to pivot to our number 3 takeaway, unless you got anything else on Tyler.
No, that's a great segue too.
Yeah, because
it has to do with Tyler.
Right. The other way this team can be great is the offensive line. That is, I think, to me, another, we talk about a lot. You can tell the narrative that they're trying to push a little bit by who we get to talk to after practices. So we got 3 offensive linemen to talk to in 3 practices, but I mean, it's deserved when coming into camp. It was, I think, one of the things that was going to be interesting to see because of how much turnover there was there. Obviously, Javion Cohen coming in as a transfer from Alabama. He missed the first practice because he was at the NFL scouting combine,
Right.
a seminar intended for underclassmen who are likely to be high draft picks. That guy could be one of the top guard prospects in next year's draft. Matt Lee, who, as I mentioned, we talked to today, seemingly has locked down that center job. It's a shame we're not seeing Zion Nelson, obviously, who only played in 1 game last year because of offseason knee surgery and then a setback. So
it's a shame.
That's kind of like the wild card in this conversation, but just getting those 2 guys in, and we talked to Inez Cooper today, who's gigantic. Like they've really changed over. I think last year's offensive line, it's also a shame we didn't get to see them really, because Zion, I think coming into the year, we thought the line had a chance to be pretty good with Mario and Mirabal coaching them up. Obviously, Zion Nelson, had a chance to be one of the best tackles in the country, we thought, if he had stayed healthy. And then he got hurt. Jalen Rivers got hurt. Justice Olashone got hurt. Ja'Kai Clark missed time, right? Like it was just everything went wrong for that line. But they really made a concerted effort, obviously, to change over that position by recruiting really well. We'll talk about some of those guys in a second, I'm sure. But also the transfers coming in, and then, you know, really, I mean, it's just a really big group above all else. Like the size stands out.
The size does. It is a shame because they had 4 guys that have departed, you know,
Right.
Including Ja'Kai as far as football goes,
Mhm.
who's transferring to SMU.
Yep.
You know, he had played for a few years there, and then and John Campbell, you know, transferred to Tennessee, and then you had a couple other ones, and you're right, a lot of them were injured, and some of them, like Zion's a really smart guy, you know, and I you know, they were smart and had a lot of years of experience behind them, and they were getting injured, and it was just kind of sad. They never got a chance to really cement together. But these new guys, it's kind of fun. You never really know what's going to happen right away because there's some of them are babies. I mean, a couple of them are really young.
Yeah.
Right in high school, and they're early enrollees. But excuse me, Matt Lee. Sorry, 7-Up. Matt Lee.
Someone more caffeine.
Matt Lee seemed like a smart guy today, and I liked him.
And like an energetic passion, right? Like kind of what you want out of like your center, right? To be like,
definitely. Yeah, you love centers. Like centers are usually like that. You really like that.
They got to be, because they're the lead. I mean, he talked about today, they got to be the leader of the offensive line. You got to have that energy, that passion, and all that kind of stuff. And he's definitely got that. And he was good last year too.
Yes.
An all conference player at UCF. So not a surprise to see him step right in and seize that center job from day one of camp.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think the question is we said it just the Zion returning.
Zion is the X factor in a lot of ways.
If and when he returns, I'm saying if too, because I don't know anything.
Yeah, we don't know. We
going on with him. And if he returns, and then what would happen with that right? You know, would Inez? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, seemingly we should say like throwing Zion out for a second. It seems like it got 3 linemen who are like good and they trust and are going to start. And that's Matt Lee, that's Javion Cohen, and I'd say Jalen Rivers is in there. Also, we've seen him at left tackle for the most part early in camp. But he's a guy who obviously, if Zion comes back and plays left tackle, he could go to right tackle. He could play guard. Like his versatility.
He's really good.
Really valuable. He's really smart. They like him. They've liked him since he got on campus. And then, as you mentioned, who knows what happens to Zion Nelson? If he comes back, it changes some things. Is Inez Cooper going to keep the job? And then, of course, the 2 other guys who are knocking on that door, and certainly one of them we saw today get some work with the first team offense are those 2 freshman offensive linemen, Francis Mangoa and Samson Okunlola, both 5-star recruits. And again, only day 3 of camp. There's a key guy missing. Don't read too much into it, but also at the same time, it means something that we saw Francis Mangoa out there playing right tackle with the first team offense for at least a little bit of practice today. They are obviously really high on him, and you know, 5-star freshmen sometimes come in and that kind of stuff doesn't happen. But for him, he's going to be a factor here. I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's 6'6", right? Is he 333? I don't know what he is. He's big. I've just raved about, you know, continually, and now nowadays in college football, I mean, more freshmen are getting experience. It used to be that offensive linemen were always redshirted.
Yeah, they're just seasoned better now, and they're seasoned better now in high school, especially those guys who come from IMG, where, you know, Francis has basically been playing for like a Division II program for the last like 2 years. I mean, honestly, even better than that.
Right.
Like their facilities, their nutrition staff, that's all like Division I caliber, essentially.
And what's cool is that 300 is a 6'6", 300 pounds. Sorry, he's not. But they played together. Okunlola. So they already have the chemistry.
Yeah,
So-
we've seen them. We saw them working
Right.
as the two tackles at the
Right.
second team
Yeah.
offense.
Right.
Now Francis getting some work as the first team tackle. Like they've just got a lot of bodies, and it's something.
Right.
Inez Cooper, I think it was Inez Cooper who talked about it today. Just I've asked a couple of the offensive linemen, like, what do you think of them really going out and trying to overhaul this offensive line? Like, guys could react one of two ways, right? You could be like disrespected, like, we've got what we needed here. But Inez Cooper was just like, we just need more bodies. And you saw it last year, obviously, with a lot of the injuries. You just needed bodies and obviously Mario really stresses competition. Like they've got depth. I think this honestly might hold up pretty much across the board. There's a couple of positions where I think they're pretty thin right now. Cornerback is one that stands out, but and obviously some positions right now with guys hurt or look thin, but when you start thinking about the guys who fill in those gaps, it looks a little bit better in the incoming freshmen, but like they kind of seem a lot deeper at a whole bunch of different spots than they were last year. O-line, I think, is the most extreme, but wide receiver, they've got a lot of guys running around out there and a lot of different body types now, with Isaiah Horton as a guy who looks like he's gonna.
Yeah, he's fairly big, right?
Yeah, he's bulked up.
He's bulky,
and then they've got the fresh, the speedy slot receiver freshman coming in. Quarterback, they've got two pretty interesting guys, obviously. Like, I think the depth, which it's hard to build, and it's not built overnight. But I think on the offensive line, we've kind of seen the O-line kind of reach sort of what I think Mario Cristobal would like his vision to look like in terms of having. You really feel like 8+ guys who have a chance to be really good players, I think.
And their O linemen, I don't know, like running backs, I guess like everybody.
Yeah.
Are constantly getting hurt and stuff. So, and you were talking about their reaction, Inez's and stuff, all the new people coming in, and Jalen Rivers was great the day he talked to us, and he said that it's a business.
Yeah.
Which was great. He said it's a business. New people come in, you have to learn how to adapt. And just got to kind of push forward. But I think they're happy about these new people.
Yeah, I mean, it runs with the theme, and it's like, obviously it's kind of all talk right now until we see it, but like, we talked to Cam Kinchins the other day, and what was the quote he gave you? I think you put it in your headline where he's like
chasing greatness.
Well, it's like the idea, like if you don't want to compete, get out of the way, basically. And obviously it's all talk until we see how it manifests in the season. But like, that's the theme that they're trying to hammer down. It's the theme they tried to hammer down last year too. But that's where we're at now. So,
I mean,
it's been a fun couple of days. He means it definitely. He means it definitely, but he can't speak for everyone. Yes.
Right. So,
all right. I think that'll about wrap things up for us.
It's hard to tell, David. It's hard.
Yeah, it's just 3 practices. It's just fun to talk about football again and actually be able to see some stuff. We'll be back. We'll see if we'll come back next week. Either way, we'll have an episode next week because we'll do basketball, even if we don't do any football talk next week.
Right.
But after that, we'll be back. Football reports every week on spring practice up until the spring game. What date is the spring game again? Remind me.
April 14th.
April 14th. So we got a month of these. Got a month of these, right? Friday night game. That's what I'm really looking forward to. But like I said, just fun to talk football again. And Susan is out there at practice every game. I'm out there. I don't know, but Barry Jackson and I kind of split up days out there. But you're out there every day, so you can follow her on Twitter at @smillerdegnan. She's got all your coverage of Miami football. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. I'm out there a lot too. And yeah, I mean, between that and college basketball, March Madness, it's my favorite time of the year. So
true. And we're both in spring break now.
Yeah, spring break. Exactly. Like we said, Miami going on spring break. So we'll be quiet down a little bit, but then we'll be right back at it in a couple of weeks here. So thanks as always for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.